In the Left 4 Dead universe, the green flu is an incredibly infectious pathogen that tore through the United States in just 2 weeks, leaving chaos and devastation in its wake. For those new to Left 4 Dead or the channel, this virus is more than just your average infection. It's a force of nature, mutating ordinary people into monstrosities and horrifying abominations. On the surface, it might seem like just another overpowered video game virus designed to create tension and drama, but today, I want to dive just a little bit deeper. Could the green flu actually exhibit some form of sentience or higher intelligence? That's what we're exploring in this video. Let's start with the basics. It's well known that most viruses adapt to their environments to ensure survival and transmission. Take the big three. Infectious diseases including tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV, also known as AIDS in its later stages. Each has shown remarkable adaptability over time. Despite decades of research, only malaria and tuberculosis have cures, and even those rely heavily on consistent medical intervention. HIV and AIDS, while manageable with medication, still lacks a definitive cure. Now, let's compare these with the green flu. This virus spread so rapidly and mutated so unpredictably that scientists couldn't even get a foothold. Within 2 weeks, the green flu decimated most of the country. Scientists learned only one thing. The virus mutates at an unprecedented rate. Sometimes it's spread through airborne particles, other times through fluid transmission, and sometimes both, other times neither of those. Methods that changed so often it became impossible to track. Imagine having a sample of the virus in a lab, only to find that by the time you study it, the strain in the real world has already evolved into something entirely different. The speed and adaptability of the green flu put it in a league of its own. Traditional diseases have years or even decades of research dedicated to them. The green flu left no such room for preparation. By the time symptoms became severe enough to warrant attention, it was too late. Entire regions were overrun and containment became absolutely impossible. But what makes the green flu so fascinating is that it doesn't behave like any virus we know. According to the Left 4 Dead lore, it's similar to rabies, but it's widely referred to as an influenza strain, a designation that doesn't quite add up. Influenza doesn't cause violent transformations or horrific mutations. At worst, it makes you bedridden with fatigue and a fever. So why does the green flu act so differently? This is where my theory comes into play. The green flu may have some form of autonomy or higher level functionality. And no, I'm not suggesting the virus could sit down and have a chat with CETA officials, but its behavior raises some intriguing questions. For instance, during the initial outbreak, the virus didn't immediately cause grotesque mutations. Instead, it mimicked a standard flu, with infected individuals showing mild symptoms like fatigue or a runny nose. This allowed the virus to spread undetected. People simply went home to rest, unknowingly carrying the pathogen to their families and communities. It's almost as if the green flu knew to keep its more violent traits dormant until it had infected enough hosts to ensure widespread chaos. Now, this may just be the byproduct of dumb luck or a calculated decision. Once the mutations began, the virus unleashed its full destructive potential. These transformations, turning humans into mindless killing machines, created mass panic, making containment again incredibly difficult. This dormancy, followed by a strategic activation of sorts, feels too calculated to be random. Could it be a result of deliberate engineering, like a biological weapon? We don't have much lore to confirm its origins, but it is worth considering. Even more chilling is how the virus seems to time its mutations perfectly. Take the Dead Air campaign, for example. We witness a plane crash, a clear indication that someone infected boarded the plane without showing symptoms. Mid-flight, they turned, leading to catastrophic consequences. This timing isn't just convenient, it suggests a level of precision that feels almost intentional. Now, you might argue this is just how viruses work. They spread, they mutate, and they adapt, but the green flu operates on a level far beyond what we've seen in the real world. Even during the recent COVID-19 pandemic, mutations occurred gradually and primarily within populations, not within individual hosts. The green flu seems to defy these rules, mutating so rapidly and effectively that it outpaces any known pathogen. So, where does that leave us? The green flu is more than just an overly dramatic video game virus. Its ability to adapt, spread, and manipulate its hosts hints at a deeper, almost strategic intelligence. Whether this is a product of natural evolution or deliberate design remains unclear, but one thing is certain: the green flu is terrifyingly effective at its job. Not to mention, the special infected in Left 4 Dead often work together in ways that seem almost deliberate. They exhibit behaviors that make it appear as though they're actively cooperating, especially during hordes. For example, as seen in many of the Left 4 Dead 2 trailers, the smoker often pulls survivors back into groups of common infected, setting them up for an ambush. In my witch video, I suggested that the witch might be less of a random obstacle and more of a calculated trap designed by the green flu to lure survivors into dangerous situations. This implies that the virus doesn't just mutate aimlessly, it adapts in ways that optimize its chances of success. Let's take a closer look at the special infected and their strategic roles. These mutations seem to support the idea of the green flu functioning as a hive mind of sorts, creating specific forms to fulfill different purposes. The boomer acts as a rallying point for hordes. Its bile marks survivors, communicating their location to nearby infected and initiating massive attacks. The smoker is an expert at ensnaring survivors. Its tongue traps individuals and pulls them into groups of common infected, slowing down teams and creating opportunities for chaos. The tank, while seemingly straightforward, is more than just a brute. My interpretation is that the tank was a response to military blockades and barriers. Its sheer strength allows it to dismantle physical defenses, flip vehicles, and withstand significant damage. Interestingly, the tank also exhibits predatory behavior. It hides around corners, lying in wait to ambush survivors. For such a massive creature, this level of stealth and strategy is impressive and suggests an instinct for survival far beyond mere brute force. Now, let's consider the spitter. While her inclusion in my theory is more speculative, it's worth noting that her acid doesn't just dissolve flesh. It appears designed to break down other materials as well. Early in the outbreak, we see Sita and hazmat-suited personnel attempting to contain the virus. It's possible that the green flu recognized these protective measures and created the spitter to counteract them, melting away barriers like hazmat suits and other protective gear. While gameplay limitations prevent us from seeing this directly, it's a pretty cool concept that would tie more deeply into the virus's strategy. The Charger shares similarities with the tank, but seems to be a lighter version of the mutation. Its massive single arm is a clear adaptation for plowing through groups of survivors or obstacles. My theory is that Chargers were created specifically to deal with the tightly packed lines of people at military and SETA checkpoints. In these situations, a creature like the Charger would be devastatingly effective at breaking through large groups. Also, there's the Jockey. An oddity among the special infected, the Jockey is smaller and harder to hit, but its most notable trait is its unsettling constant laughter. This makes it a perfect distraction, drawing survivors' attention away from other threats. While it's possible the Jockey was just a failed attempt at creating a smaller childlike infected, its role as a chaotic diversion cannot be overstated. And finally, we have the Hunter. At first glance, the Hunter might seem like just a particularly agile and aggressive special infected. However, I believe it plays a more significant role during the outbreak. Its stealthy, predatory nature suggests it may be designed to target individuals who are isolated from their group, whether that's survivors, soldiers, or researchers. Now, let's consider the government's likely response early in the infection. It's reasonable to assume they would have sent out teams to secure samples or locate patient zero. In fact, there's a hint of this in the No Mercy campaign, where you can spot what appears to be a quarantine room for a patient in the hospital. While this patient's fate is unclear, it's safe to assume the hospital and the government's efforts to secure samples fell victim to the outbreak. The Hunter could very well be an evolved response to these efforts. Its ability to stalk and ambush individuals makes it perfect for countering scouting parties or small groups of soldiers trying to retrieve valuable data or specimens. By targeting and eliminating these groups, the virus ensures that any efforts to study or contain it are disrupted. Now, let's address the elephant in the room: the survivors in Left 4 Dead. These characters belong to a rare subset of the population known as carriers. Carriers are individuals infected with the virus that show no symptoms. While they appear healthy, they can unknowingly spread the virus to others, making them a critical factor in the outbreak's continued survival. This leads me to another interesting theory about carriers and the behavior of the infected. Throughout the game, you'll notice that many of the common and special infected have bite marks, but they're never completely consumed. It's almost as if the infection knows that a few bite marks are enough to spread the virus, and anything more would be unnecessary. But there is another layer to my theory. If you look closely, especially during moments like the end of the Last Stand DLC, it becomes clear that the infected seem to exhibit some form of strategic behavior. Sure, you could argue that survivors don't face endless hordes of tanks purely for gameplay balance. However, it's also possible that the infection itself is holding back, limiting its forces to subtly steer the survivors, particularly carriers, towards human population centers. In this way, it's almost like the infection is herding carriers into society to maximize the virus's spread. Another interesting observation is actually how the survivors are attacked. They're never bitten, they're constantly smacked or struck by the infected. This suggests that the virus recognizes carriers as immune to further infection, leaving eliminations as its only viable option. Throughout the games, movement is key to survival. Hordes tend to form more commonly when you're in one place for extended periods of time, almost as if the green flu is weighing its options between killing the carriers or continuing to allow them to make their way to other human beings. Carriers are a pretty significant threat to humanity. Even in a post-infection world, they could reignite an outbreak with devastating consequences. While the chance of this might seem slim, carriers are essentially a trump card for the virus. Without confronting the ethical dilemma of eliminating carriers, human beings who appear healthy, there's no way to ensure the green flu won't resurge. The infection's brilliance lies in this paradox, making it an ever-present threat to humanity's survival. When you step back and examine all these mutations, it's pretty difficult not to wonder if the green flu's adaptations are more than just random mutations. Each special infected serves a unique purpose, complementing the others in a way that suggests a larger strategy. Whether this points to the virus functioning as a hive mind, or simply adapting to its environment in extraordinary ways, it's clear that the green flu is unlike any pathogen we've encountered and most likely will ever encounter. So, why do I say this? It's clear to me that the infection demonstrates some form of coordination. If it didn't, the mutations we see in the special infected, such as extreme muscle growth in the tank and charger, or the ability to produce bile such as the boomer and spitter, wouldn't be as calculated. Without direction, such changes would likely harm or kill the host rather than serve a specific purpose. Instead, the infection seems to understand its own needs, creating specialized infected perfectly suited to counter military strategies and survivor tactics. Again, this all points to the idea that the green flu isn't just a mindless pathogen. It operates with an unsettling level of purpose, as though it has a form of autonomy guiding its evolution. Its mutations aren't random, they're deliberate, targeting weak points in human resistance to ensure the virus can spread and thrive. Even its one weakness, longevity, feels like a calculated risk, trading short-term effectiveness for devastating initial impact. And then there's the role of carriers, the ultimate wildcards. By ensuring that the carriers can unknowingly spread the infection long after an outbreak has been quote-unquote contained, the virus creates a built-in failsafe. This isn't just biology, it is strategy. To me, the green flu's ability to coordinate, adapt, and spread through carriers suggests it's more than just a virus. It's a living entity with a form of autonomy, making it an unparalleled threat to humanity. Thank you so much for watching this breakdown of the green flu in Left 4 Dead. If you found this analysis interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you agree that the green flu operates autonomously, or do you think there's another explanation for its behavior? Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and remember, survival is more than just luck. Sometimes it's about understanding the enemy.